The UK was in an official period of mourning for 10 days after the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. The state funeral took place on Monday, the 19th of November, and although the official period of mourning is over, many will continue to experience a sense of collective grief for some time to come. So in this video, I'd like to explore a topic that not many people speak about, which is grief. And let's see if we can discover how suffering can actually be a blessing in disguise. If you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the channel and invite the bell to be notified every time I upload new content, which will be relevant to you if you're looking to become more fluent, articulate, and confident in English. And if we haven't met yet, my name is Tanya Meyer, and I'm an English as a foreign language teacher to adults, specializing in mindfulness practices to help bring clarity, understanding, and joy to your English acquisition and use. Mindfulness is the practice of stopping and looking deeply to what is happening within and around us. And it is with this awareness that we're able to put it at the service of our English language progress. Buddhist traditions are based on the Four Noble Truths. And the first noble truth is that suffering is there. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we need to go and look for suffering. We don't need to do that because there is more than enough suffering there already. And so that is the first noble truth, that suffering is there. It's something that we all experience. Ironically, though, when we are suffering, we feel alone. We feel that this pain, this discomfort is ours and ours alone, and that nobody can really understand what it is that we're experiencing at that time. And so grief and bereavement are usually experienced in private. And yet, as I say, suffering is something that we all experience. The second noble truth is about the origin or the causes of our suffering, which are mainly our own greed, craving, and ignorance. And the third noble truth is that there is a path that leads to the liberation from suffering. And that is the fourth noble truth, the Eightfold Noble Path that leads to the cessation of suffering. So like I say, let's talk about grief, bereavement, and loss. When grief strikes us, we say that we're grief-stricken. For example, when we lose someone we love. But we can also experience grief when, for example, we move to another location, or when we lose a pet, or we lose a job, or because of the decline in the physical or mental health of someone we love. And grief can be quite overpowering. We can feel overcome by deep sorrow and heartache at these times. And as we adjust to the loss, there's a range of emotions we go through gradually. First, there's great sadness, and we might even fall into depression for some time. We might also feel shock and disbelief, or we might be in denial as our minds try to protect us from the pain. We might even experience numbness. And if this numbness continues for a long period, then we might feel stuck or frozen. We might also go through stages of anger and hostility and feeling easily overwhelmed. Some people might even feel relief when someone close to them dies, especially if that person was suffering a lot or if the relationship with that person was difficult. Relief is a normal response, and it doesn't mean that we didn't care for the person. It's also common to feel a mix of emotions, like sadness, anger, and guilt, and anything in between. Regarding the recent passing of Queen Elizabeth, we can say that many of us are experiencing collective grief, as she was a central part of life in Britain for 70 years. I also experienced collective grief earlier this year with the passing of my teacher, the Vietnamese monk, peace activist and writer and founder of the Plum Village tradition, Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away on the 22nd of January of this year, also at the age of 96. Now, it might be surprising to be grieving for somebody we never met personally, and we might even feel that we have no right to be upset. But the nature of collective grief is that we feel we knew the person who passed, either because they've been part of our lives for a very long time, or because we've read their books and listened to their talks and have learnt a lot from their teachings. It's also natural to grieve collectively because the person who died was so widely admired, a source of inspiration and a role model. Experiencing collective grief reminds us of our own experiences, that is, previous bereavements, or the person who passed being special to someone we've lost, or they might remind us of them. Even when the loss is of someone who is elderly and can be seen as expected, the world feels changed when it happens. Their constancy feels like they'll always be around, and their passing comes as a shock. We might feel less safe and more vulnerable. If this is resonating with you at all, comment below with "I resonate." So, how can we support ourselves while we're grieving? One of Thich Nhat Hanh's main teachings is the practice of returning to the island within ourselves through mindful or conscious breathing. He says, "Go home to yourself by way of your mindful breathing and recognize the feelings inside. There may be feelings of anger, of fear, of anxiety, or of despair. Whatever feeling is there, recognize it and embrace it very tenderly. You shouldn't try to suppress the strong emotions or negative feelings you have. Your fear, your anger is you. Don't fight it. Don't struggle against your fear, your anger, or your despair. With mindfulness, you can embrace these feelings. If you continue to breathe mindfully, the energy of mindfulness will be generated and will embrace and calm your difficult feelings, like a mother tenderly embracing and calming a crying baby. Usually when we are suffering, we tend to run away and we spend a lot of time just running and not wanting to recognize our unpleasant feelings. Many of us are fearful, and that's because there is a lot to fear. We fear getting older, we fear getting sick, we fear not being loved, not being cared for. So sitting with our grief and with our unpleasant feelings is already an act of bravery and courage. And if we're able to do that, it's within a few minutes that the unpleasant feelings start to subside. Something else we can do is to connect with others. If we let others know how we're feeling, if we look for support, we might even want to speak with others who are also coping with loss, and this could help us. Of course, we also need to take care of ourselves during difficult times. We need to make sure that we're getting enough sleep, that we're eating well, and avoiding drugs and alcohol, which only make problems worse in the long run. Now, I've spoken before about going through grief and loss myself, and how learning from spiritual teachers, that is, committing to include mindfulness practices into my daily life, has truly transformed the way I do everything. From my relationship with myself and with others, to creating my own business, which also includes these mindfulness practices that have been so very helpful to me in overcoming stress, fear, anxiety, and depression. I'll leave a link to that video right here. But as for how suffering is a blessing, how is that possible? There are many images that teachers use to explain this. And one of my favorites is the observation of how lobsters grow. Lobsters have exoskeletons, which means that their skeletons are outside their body, like a kind of shell. The shell doesn't grow with them. And so when the lobster grows, its shell starts to feel confined and uncomfortable. And it needs to molt its old shell. And as it does this, it walks away with a new shell already formed. The moral of this story is that the stimulus for the lobster to abandon the comfort of its shell is discomfort. And so for many of us, it is through discomfort, dissatisfaction, and suffering that we find a practice or a spiritual path to add to our experience and understanding of the world. And then, through our practice, the nature of reality starts to reveal itself to us, and everything shifts. Today, I do what I love, and I work with like-minded people who resonate with my values and principles. I understand the roots of my suffering better and have learnt to look at people and situations from different perspectives. I'm better able to put myself in the shoes of others and have developed patience and kindness and openness, understanding of myself and others. Amazingly, time, space, and opportunity have also opened up with the practice of mindfulness that I found as a result of suffering. And I find myself today in an environment and with many inner and outer conditions that are favorable for further personal and professional growth, in the service of being in a position to help more people develop their English language skills. In other words, it's through staying with my suffering and acknowledging it, embracing it, instead of rejecting, suppressing, repressing, or ignoring it, that I've learned creative ways of transforming it into something beautiful, which is the life that I live today. And even when not all is beautiful, because there's always space for transformation, there is still much less suffering. The practice also helps me appreciate the little things, the blooming of a flower, the singing of birds, the stillness within and without, the silent and peaceful company of my pets, the joy of clean sheets. Knowing that suffering exists reminds me to appreciate and enjoy everything more and more deeply. The absence of suffering becomes a source of happiness. Much of the time, much more than before anyway, I feel in alignment with myself, the surface part of me and the deeper part of me. And although the alignment isn't perfect, and I certainly do falter at times, I'm able to recover more quickly as well. Knowing that suffering is there has made me more resilient, confident, lighter, happier, peaceful, softer, opener, and in touch with my own vulnerability. Becoming fluent, confident, and articulate in a language other than our own is also an act of bravery. It takes courage to do that. If you're already on a path towards proficiency in English, then you know about the discomfort. You know how unpleasant it is when you don't understand, when you wish it were easier. But at the same time, becoming more confident, appreciating the progress that you've already made, and feeling motivated to deepen your understanding and move forward towards proficiency, it's a strength that we have and something that we can really appreciate. And so if you're ready to take your progress with English into your own hands, or if you're looking for a coaching program that supports you along your way, take a look at the links in the description box. And I'll see you in the next video. Remember to invite the bell to be notified when I upload it. And I'll see you then. Bye for now.